Like, to me, if I'm Jared Vanderaa, it's go to Takedown City, bro. Go to Takedown City.
And he's had to deal with a lot this week, and it's a lot of jet lag, time travel, just time travel.
I mean, look, when you initially think of Carl Roberson, you think about a guy who a kickboxing background.
Fraud. Him saying he's from a kickboxing background and looking to grapple every opportunity is a big red flag for me.
Welcome into this week's episode of Takedown City, as we're here to break down UFC San Diego, which goes down Saturday, of course, in San Diego, California. We are presented by BetMGM. We're going to tell you about the great offer that BetMGM has for the Takedown City listeners. Of course, as always, on the Takedown City podcast, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever someone may be watching this. We don't know what time of the day it may be, so hopefully you're having a great time. Pete, how's your week going, man?
It's going on, man. Another week grinding and always busy. I guess it's a good thing. And we have another fun-filled week of MMA, tons of cards, tons of action, and some fights to get excited about.
Oh man, I mean, we got MMA all weekend long for you. No matter whether you want to watch some regionals, some UFC, Bellator, PFL, Cage Warriors. I mean, there is so much mixed martial arts action to take in here. But of course, we are here to talk about UFC San Diego. Going to be headlined by a key matchup in the 135-pound division. You got the former champion Dominick Cruz taking on Marlon Chito Vera. And I will tell you this: I know we're going to get into that fight here in a little bit, Pete, but when I saw the betting odds initially on this one, I was like, wow, I was a little baffled. I will tell you this. I was a little baffled how big a favorite Cheeto was.
Really? Okay. Oh, well, that's look, some good conversation because
no issue with him being the favorite. Okay. It was just more of how much of a favorite he was.
Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to dive into that, but I'm excited for it.
Before we get into breaking down UFC San Diego, do want to give a little kudos to our winner last week in the comment section, as Kilo Whiskey correctly picked Brian Battle, knocking out Takeshi Soto. Man, what a beautiful knockout that was. Last week, nothing but finishes. Hopefully we have another week full of finishes. There's definitely some fights, particularly on the preliminary card. We'll kind of touch on the prelims, towards the end of the show, but we'll see if we can have a dynamic card like we did last week. But of course, we're going to start with the first fight of the main card and work our way up. And of course, the first fight of the main card, at least as we're recording this show, we're over UFC.com, Ariane Lipski versus Priscila Cachoeira is listed as the opening fight of the main card. I will tell you that when I was putting the card together, I did not see Josh Quinlan and Jason Witt listed. My understanding that fight is still on. Of course, it had that issue with Josh Quinlan's drug test last week there in Nevada. But Priscila Cachoeira, Ariane Lipski, they were supposed to take place last week here, Pete. Lipski, a minus 190 betting favorite, plus 155 on the other side here for Priscila Cachoeira. We should note this fight last week was supposed to take place at 125 pounds. Now this week will take place at 135 pounds. Of course, last week Lipski missed weight, and then the fight was pulled on fight day due to medical reasons there by the officials there with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And I remember last week, kind of as the week went on, Pete, we were you were talking about this matchup, and a matchup that as we got closer to Saturday, we kept saying, man, we're liking the dog money here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like to start off, heading into last week, I liked Ariane Lipski. And then the more I started to dive into her camp and what she's had to experience within the past couple months, and then missing weight, I was like, man, it seems like it's red flag after red flag. Now the fight gets canceled and then pushed back a week. And in my mind, I'm like, a week? Like, that's it? Like, I'm surprised because it seems like she's had a rough couple months, battling COVID and now weight issues and fighting at a higher weight class. I do think that's going to favor Priscila Cachoeira. So, I mean, the skills are still there for Lipski. I just wonder how affected she's going to be heading into this week. And I will tell you that I was a Lipski backer. It could be a little bit of just going down narrative street, but I really like Priscila Cachoeira here as plus 155 underdog And I think that it's worth a sprinkle of adding her TKO prop sitting at plus 625, just because of, the way that she fights. She likes to come forward, march you down, and throw relentless combinations. And she has really good power. And Lipski has been TKO'd and bullied in the cage at times. So if she's not 100%, I mean, I'm already getting to the underdog in Cachoeira, but I might as well sprinkle some of her best paths to victory, and that's definitely via TKO KO.
When you look at the fight stats for this one, a 2-inch reach advantage for Ariane Lipski, but the stat that really sticks out to you, Pete, when, and I know you're just like me, we're putting together our Excel spreadsheets of various stats that help break down these fights. And look, and MMA stats always don't tell the true side of the story, but sometimes they do. The stat that scares the hell out of you when it comes to Priscila Cachoeira is that strikes absorbed per minute rate, Pete, at 7.91.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's a red flag in itself, because banking on your chin to hold up and to just walk through combinations is a terrible strategy. It really is. Incorporating head movement and blocking is extremely important. It sounds like it's obvious, but Priscila Cachoeira has shown that she really doesn't respect her opponent's power at all, and she walks through it. And some fighters are not the same when they're going back, when they're going backwards. And I do think that her dominant footwork and just her marching down type of style could lead to more success here for her. So I'm still going to like Priscila Cachoeira, despite the fact that she's extremely hittable. I know Lipski knocked down Minnie Baum twice in her previous encounter, but I have to tell you that all the stuff I'm hearing about, Lipski's camp and the struggles health-wise past couple weeks, past couple months, it's tough for me not to say, let's go after Cachoeira and put her on our ticket.
And when Cachoeira came into the UFC, she went through a MERS row. We all remember that matchup against Valentina Shevchenko. We look at the other side for Ariane Lipski. She's 3-4 in the UFC. And, I do wonder, and I think this is a question on both sides of the equation. And you can talk about this from a fighter's perspective of you have a date and you're working towards peaking at that date. Now that date is a week later. You're now at a higher weight class at 135 pounds that I would suspect that this is probably very close to walking around weight. And knowing how much the California Commission and things they do when it comes to weigh-ins, I would expect the fact of that these is pretty much what these girls walking around at. Like, to me, like from a betting perspective, to me, it's about looking at taking that dog money with Priscila Cachoeira. And look, if you want to chase some money, maybe you chase that Priscila Cachoeira, wins via TKO KO. But I'd rather just give me that plus 155 and I'll take that money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, peaking is important, but I feel like that's really dependent on if fighters are training just for training camps or if it's a lifestyle. And when you meet up with fighters or you talk to fighters that training every single day is their lifestyle, I mean, you're able to take short notice opportunities. You're able to have your date push back a couple, and it's not really going to affect you so much. If you are only consistent in the gym with your training camps, then I definitely think that it could, work negatively against you. So, we'll have to see, but I definitely want to see, keep my eye on the weigh-in. And I'm just going to, target that dog money on the Cachoeira side.
Up next, we're going to talk about a matchup between Bruno Silva and Gerald Meerschaert, a.k.a. GM3. Meerschaert is a plus 240 betting underdog on this one, minus 300 for Bruno Silva. Looking at the Bruno Silva side of the equation here, of course, coming off that loss against Alex Bahia. So a totally much different matchup where you're talking about going up against a striker. Now you're going up against a guy that's known for his submission game. That loss did snap a 7-fight winning streak. That was his first loss in the UFC. Had started 3-0 in the UFC prior to that loss, getting wins against Wellington Thurman, Andrew Sanchez, and Jordan Wright. And of course, I know, Pete, you and I talked about this, him coming into the UFC. He had that win at M1 challenge against former Bellator middleweight champion Alexander Shlemenko. And on the other side of the equation, Gerald Meerschaert coming off a decision loss to Krzysztof Jotko back in April that did snap a 3-fight winning streak. All 3 of those wins coming via submission. He's 9-7 in the UFC. And one of the things that stuck out to me about GM3 Pete is going down that Instagram rabbit hole, which that's something we got to do. It is a part of the evaluation with breaking down the fight. The thing that immediately stuck out to me was the fact that GM3 has been at Killcliff FC down in South Florida, formerly known as Sanford MMA. I think it's probably going to take a while for everyone to kind of click in. That is what used to be Sanford MMA. That is what stuck out to me about GM3.
Yeah, and I think that the camp change, or just the camp that he's associated with for this fight, I think it could work a lot better in a different type of matchup. Just because I do think that he has a little bit of a chin issue going on. You know, he gets dropped a lot. He also gets hurt. Yes, he's fought top legitimate competition, and he's not bad striking, but I definitely think he's uncomfortable striking. He wants to just clinch up with you, take you to the mat where he's more comfortable and where he can snatch up the neck, because he's a fantastic submission artist. He really is. So people could be a little hesitant to back Bruno Silva here because of, you know, how Andrew Sanchez took him down basically to take down City, and then he turned the tide and knocked him out. You know, that was the worry against Wellington Turman as well. And a lot of people not holding Jordan Wright in such a high regard. I don't think Jordan Wright's all that good. But what I will tell you is that Gerald Meerschaert was not meant to win against Mahmoud Muradov. He wasn't. He was not put in a position to succeed there. And he actually, I think it was like one of the biggest upsets in a while. It wasn't like anything crazy, but it was. I just remember it was like it caught me off guard because I really just held Mahmoud Muradov in such high regard. And it's because he's live to pull off a submission if you are not, respecting it. If you're not respecting, the transitions on the mat. I think Bruno Silva knocks him out. I really think that Bruno Silva knocks out Gerald Meerschaert. The fact that we saw him go up against Alex Pereira, who made quick work of Sean Strickland, push Alex Pereira, make it a very, very competitive fight. It's going to be a different fight here because GM3 is going to be looking to change levels and, just mix things up and make Silva uncomfortable. A GM3 submission isn't impossible, but the way I think this is going to go is I think that Silva's going to knock him out. It's already juiced at -160, and I'll tell you a strategy that I did last week that was extremely profitable. I targeted the money lines, a part of my parlays, and then as far as my props, I sprinkled in round props. And I'll tell you what, I made a lot of money last week by playing the round props, and some of the round props, it was a great card to do it because there was no decisions. So, I mean, I looked like a genius last week, and it was extremely profitable because some of those rounds were completely out of whack. We're talking, like 15-1, like crazy things like that. So definitely target it, and you can get a better number on Bruno Silva by doing so.
One thing to note, GM3 does have a 3-inch reach advantage, but also one thing you notice about both these guys, their average fight time shows that these guys are finishers. Average fight time for Bruno Silva, 8 minutes and 27 seconds. For Gerald Meerschaert, 7 minutes and 56 seconds. I mean, look, if GM3 is going to pull this off, the likelihood is it's either him winning a decision or him winning via submission. If you want to chase that submission prop, man, go ahead. It's over 5-1. I get why you would chase that number, but like if you want to play GM3, I'd rather just give me the money line. I'm not trying to chase that money there. I understand why you would chase the money, but getting him at plus 240, and who knows, by the time we get to Saturday, like if you want to place a GM3 bet this week, wait till Saturday.
Yeah,
because that number now, if you like what Pete is saying here, this is to me where if you place your Bruno Silva bet right now, because I think that number is just going to skyrocket as the week goes on.
Yeah, agree. It might start, touching untouchable like type of, unless you're adding it as a parlay piece. It's like, man, it's too much juice to get to it. It's not worth it. And that's where I think you could find the value sprinkling the round props.
Well, that's a good thing this week is you don't have that 5-1 favorite,
right,
that 4.5-1 favorite where you're essentially saying, let me make that my top ticket of my parlay. I mean, right now the chalk of this card is Bruno Silva at -300. Mm-hmm. You look at the next biggest, actually Lupe Godinez would be the next biggest favorite on this card. She's -360.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big number for Lupe Godinez, which we all know how much success she's had there. But yeah, I'm like you. I do like the Bruno Silva side of this equation. Of course, this is Takedown City. We appreciate you checking out us right here on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. Of course, you're not subscribed to Odd Shopper, do that. Very simple. Just click that link right there. Also, hit that notification bell so you know when a new video is live here on the channel. We got a ton of programming for you each and every day. And do want to thank our sponsor, BetMGM, as they've got a great offer for the Takedown City viewer, as get up to $1,000 risk-free bet upon your first deposit with BetMGM. Click the link in the video description below or use the promo code OSMMA to claim your risk-free bet. Turn big plays into paydays with BetMGM. Join the king of sportsbooks. You can take that risk-free bet there. To do that little baseball this week and tie that into all this MMA action. Of course, UFC on Saturday, also PFL on Saturday afternoon, Bellator on Friday. So much MMA to bet over the next couple of days or so. Let's move over to a next matchup. It's going to be Devin Clark, who is a plus 135 betting underdog in this one, taking on Azamat Murzakanov, who is a minus 165 betting favorite in this one. And Devin Clark, one of the stories with him, Pete, leading into this one, second fight camp that he has done at Team Elevation. Great team there in the state of Colorado. Devin Clark did snap a 2-fight losing streak back in April with that third round victory against William Knight. And, he's 7-6 in the UFC, Pete, but, it shows kind of how he has fought the upper echelon, whether it's at 185 or 205 pounds. You look at his losses in the UFC, those losses are against Alex Nicholson, Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic, Ryan Spann, Anthony Smith, Ian Cutelaba. Outside the Alex Nicholson, all those have aged tremendous. You look at his wins in the UFC, that's where you necessarily don't have that huge statement win. Josh Stansbury, Jake Collier, Mike Rodriguez, Darko Stosic, Daquan Townsend, Alonzo Menifield, William Knight. To me, it's either Jake Collier or Alonzo Menifield is his best win inside of the UFC. Obviously this is I know this is another dog situation that you're looking at here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, Azamat Murzakanov was a guy that I wanted to get away from just because I felt like I thought that Tafon Nchukwi could, test him in all areas and that he could win a decision over him. Man, was I looking smart until that beautiful flying knee landed that Azamat kind of bailed out his poor performance with. And, I don't know what it is about Azamat. I think that he's fine. I'm just not blown away with him. I don't know if it's his pacing, if it's being lethargic at times. I'm not sure what it is, but what I can tell you is that I like getting to Devin Clark in this situation. He's fought in the, under the UFC for a while now. He's fought some legitimate, dangerous, fighters. And there was a time where I was like, all right, can this guy knock out Devin Clark? I'm going to target it because I thought that there was a point where Devin Clark was super susceptible to getting knocked down and hurt and quitting in a sense, getting knocked out, of course. And I think that he's really developed mentally as well, where he knows that he can push a pace despite being in the division where it's big guys, big physical guys. And I think that the pace, the wrestling, and the heavy hands of Devin Clark can pose some problems for Azamat. Obviously, I'm still worried about Devin Clark absorbing a big shot. But, to go the distance against Alonzo Menifield, even Ian Cutelaba is extremely impressive. And also William Knight, just surviving and then picking up a nice, a nice finish. I'm going to get to Devin Clark here. Like, I really am. And I think that Azamat can have success inside the UFC. I just feel like this is too much to go from Tafon Nchukwi to Devin Clark, who's fought legitimate names. So give me that plus 135 for Devin Clark. I think that there's extreme value on that. And if you wanted to sprinkle in a prop bet for Devin Clark, how I see this going, Clark wins by decision, sits at plus 275. I think that's pretty nice.
Devin Clark with a 4-inch reach advantage in this one, and talking about those takedowns that Devin Clark could potentially utilize in this matchup. Averages almost 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes of fighting. Takedown actually not the greatest when it comes to takedown actually of 35%, but obviously it's whether you go back and you watch a recent fight of Devin Clark or you go back sometime, this is a guy who wants to wrestle. And the only thing I'm not sure of as we do this show, I'm imagining it's going to be the big cage because you're in an arena, but I'm not quite sure if it's a big cage or smaller cage. If it's a smaller cage, really like Devin Clark then at that position because, we've talked about this before. While, on the outside looking in, you think, 25 versus a 30-foot. It's only 5 feet until you actually look at the dimensions of it is crazy. And it's always interesting when I bring up that question to fighter, Pete. There's some fighters that I just think would prefer the big cage. Then they say, no, man, I actually like the smaller cage, which is, and I think it's also, but I think for a lot of guys who are just getting in the UFC, I think they prefer the smaller cage because that's what they're used to.
Right. Exactly. It's less of a change, and it pushes the action. I think that a bigger cage, you have to find your opponent a little bit more. So, I mean, to each their own. It all comes down to what type of striker you are too. Are you a guy that likes to, strike within a step or two, or are you a distant striker? So, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see, but I think Devin Clark just likes to press any of his opponents against the cage, whether he's actively looking to shoot takedowns. He spends a lot of time in the clinch. So I think that he can stall out a little bit and win some moments.
We're going to briefly talk about this female matchup that's on the main card between fighters making their UFC debuts. You've got Yazmin taking on Jasmin here. Yazmin, this is her first fight. When she steps into the cage on Saturday night, it'll exactly be 1 year since her last fight in Combate Global. That's where a majority of her fights have taken place in. She was initially scheduled to take on Isabella Nunez on this card. However, that one did not happen. She is an undefeated fighter. 5 of her 8 stoppage victories have come, or 5 or 8 victories, I should say, have come via first round stoppage. And Jasmin on the other side, she's coming off a win back in April. She's won 7 straight since she opened her career, 6-4 in the UFC. A lot of unknowns for me in this one, Pete. So this one's going to be a pass on me. I want to see how they perform in the UFC before I kind of start taking a stance on them from the betting side.
Yeah, you totally took the words out of my mouth. I'm surprised with the placement on the card. I'm also surprised at the fact that so the margin that Yazmin Jauregui is as a favorite, -240. It's something I just wouldn't touch. In women's MMA, it tends to be a little competitive at times, especially low level. I would consider this low level. The over 2.5 is already juiced. It's sitting at -195. So I would recommend just going elsewhere. Honestly, like there's too many unknowns in this situation. I don't recommend you guys targeting this to have a profitable night.
Is this hashtag armbar from guard?
It could be. It's hashtag avoid at all costs. That's what it is. So I will not be touching it.
And last week, if your fighter tapped, you better hope the referee saw it.
Oh my God, that was the strangest thing in the world. I mean, it worked out for me. Worked out for me, but it was just like, oh man, facepalm nation right there.
Here's the crazy part about that. So Ron McCarthy was the judge that was literally right there. So he saw the tap. Pete, if he didn't see the tap, Chris Tione could have called that a no contest.
Yeah, that would have been really bad for me. I mean, not really, but it was just like, oh yeah, my girl won. And then I'm like, hold on, what? And Edgar would look pretty guilty though. She looked pretty guilty. So.
No, bro. How about she's acting like, oh no, I didn't tap. Like, wait, yeah. Like, that's bro. That whole scene was unreal. But
Twitter was going crazy. Twitter was like, get her out of the UFC for that.
Bro, it's one of these things where, and look, you've heard as a fighter where the referee says the fight's not over till I tell you it's over.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, like you love the good sportsmanship to not break your opponent's arm and all that, but there's that other side of what if that judge is right there. No one cage side saw the tap. And all of a sudden, you just lost out on a second check because of being a sportsman.
But you know, that happens a lot when it comes to a verbal tap too. Because a verbal tap, you know, if your arms are tied up or your legs are tied up in an awkward situation, sometimes verbal is the only way to tap. And then if the ref didn't hear it, or you know what I mean, then that becomes an entirely different situation too. So it's completely. I actually thought for a lot of people probably hate how they handled it, but I thought it was an interesting way to adjust to a terrible situation by saying
that's the protocol.
What? Yeah.
That's actually pretty good. I was listening to Aaron Bronson on the Anakin Florian podcast, and he just took the judge's course at the Association of Boxing Michigan Competitive Sports meeting, and he said, he's like, we went over that exact scenario in the judging course. He goes, that's protocol of how you do it.
Well, I mean, the way that people were like, oh, is he just going around asking, did anybody see anything? And it seemed like they were just completely doing it like, I don't know, just like, right. I don't know. Like they were making it up as they went. And I'm happy that they came up with a protocol like that. It was just kind of odd because usually replay bails everybody out of everything. And when replay had nothing, it's just like, oh man.
Okay.
Like, could the corner have like hit the challenge? You know what I mean? And then like,
yeah, well, in Nevada, they have a replay system,
right?
But it's one of those things of being on the production side of things. You know, that next day, the UFC production team was going around that cage going, what kind of camera can we literally install where we eliminate that blind spot? Because that is, from a UFC perspective, it's so rare to where there's not an angle to show whether or not something happened. I mean, like, look, could that happen in a regional show where maybe you have 2, 3, maybe 4 cameras? Yeah,
right, exactly.
But in the UFC, you just never expect, because they do. I mean, they're the best in the business. I mean,
the solution is going to be a drone. That's the only thing that's.
No, you know what I was thinking? They're going to put GoPros all throughout the bottom of the cage.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. I mean, they have some sneaky cams like PFL does. They call them the ghost cam, and I think that would be a solution.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's move over to the co-main event of this fight card. It's Nate Landwehr taking on David Onama. David Onama, the -275 betting favorite, +210 for Nate Landwehr. This is the first fight in 10 months for Nate Landwehr, which was a third-round submission versus Klein. He's 2-2 in the UFC, seeking to win back-to-back wins in the UFC for the first time. Both of his UFC losses have come via first-round stoppage against Herbert Burns and Julian Erosa. If you may remember the Erosa one, he felt that fight was maybe stopped a little earlier. Personally, I didn't think it was stopped early. Faced a ton of tough competition over in Russia, fighting for M1 challenge. He was previously booked a fight last week against Zubara. However, that fight got canceled. Now you got David Onama stepping in here, who has won back-to-back fights since losing his UFC debut there against Mason Jones, coming off a win just over a month ago against Garrett Armfield. Second-round submission victory there. So second fight in about 35-ish days or 34 days or so. We were talking pre-show about this matchup with David Onama. We both love David Onama. This is a guy that James Krause has essentially built since day one of him walking into his gym. But, I love to check out James Krause's show because I feel like I learned something every time I hear him kind of talk about the fight game. But, he talked about after Onama's matchup against Garrett that it was a bad weight cut for him. And part of that bad weight cut was he lost the fight. And he started enjoying the good life, Pete. And then he had to get back to weight cut. And it wasn't a great weight cut. So how much that played into it wasn't a great first-round performance before he got that victory in the second round.
No, not at all. And as far as upside, I think that David Onama has more upside in the UFC than Nate Landwehr. Now, upside doesn't always result in the results. It doesn't always result in a win. And just because he has the best overall upside within the next 5 years doesn't mean that he's going to beat Nate Landwehr. He needs to perform that night. And I will tell you that despite getting knocked out in 2 of his UFC fights against Herbert Burns and Julian Erosa, that Ludovic Klein submission wins looking better and better, because Ludovic Klein completely destroyed my night when I was back in Mason Jones. I was super confident And that's looking better and better. And Darren Elkins, tough out, always a tough out. So I don't like the odds where they're at, if I'm being honest. I think that David Onama has a great chance of knocking out Nate Landwehr, an excellent chance. But I will tell you that if Nate really just presses and incorporates wrestling, that's a way to survive. On the outside, I do think that Onama is going to land the big shots, have the big moments. But that round 1 against Garrett Armfield, maybe it's because Garrett's really good. I think Garrett's pretty sneaky good, but I just expected a lot more of like a dominant win from Onama. Like, you know what I mean? Like years down the road since you guys initially fought, and you have Armfield stepping up on short notice despite having a recent bout. I just expected more. And yes, David Onama got the win, but it didn't look good early on. So I just think the odds are a little too wide. As far as like props, I think that Onama via TKO sitting at plus 175 is something I'd probably like to get after more than that minus 275.
Yeah, I'm with you there. One thing, I talked about earlier on the show was stats that stuck out to you. In this one, it's a strikes land per minute. And it's on both sides of the equation in this one. For Nate, 6.51. For David, 5.61. One of the things that I would say would concern me being a Nate backer in this one, Pete, and I'll get your take from a fighter's perspective. I just wonder, could a more technical fighter take advantage of a fighter who is going to be super aggressive?
Yeah, but I don't think that Nate's like really sloppy. I think that he can be sloppy, but like his aggressive footwork and pressure is really, really good because it puts his opponents on the back foot. It's not like he's going out there like an amateur, just swinging wildly and blitzing forward on a straight line. I think he can be technical when he wants to. And he showed that a lot over at M1, where he was able to fight some stiff competition. Like, props to him. Like, he built his name by fighting stiff competition. So incorporating the wrestling is important. That's how Mason Jones had a ton of success against David Onama. I'm still picking David Onama to win the bout, but I do think that the odds are a little wide for a guy who is stepping up on short notice.
Mentioning about odds being a little wide, that's kind of the way I looked at the main event here of Marlon Chito Vera and Dominick Cruz. Dom Cruz, a plus 180 betting underdog, minus 225 for Marlon Vera. The money has come down a little bit. Earlier today, it was around plus 200 for Dominick Cruz, sitting over there. And I mean, look, I'm not saying that Chito Vera shouldn't be the favorite. It's just, I was surprised how big of a favorite he was. I would have thought it would be somewhere kind of in the range of a minus 150, 175 for Chito.
Okay. Jason's thinking that WEC Dominick Cruz coming in. That's
okay. All right. Here's what I'll say this. I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you.
Okay. Let me hear it.
Would you be more open to picking Dominick Cruz if this was a 3-round fight as opposed to a 5-round fight?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily know how I would answer that. I will tell you that just in 2022, I just don't think that the style of Dominick Cruz is going to allow for him to avoid that power as much as he used to. I think that the timing, the speed, the rhythm, the footwork, the takedowns used to be phenomenal, and they still are amazing, right? But we've seen that durability kind of like it doesn't seem like it's where it used to be. And for a guy who hasn't taken a ton of damage throughout his career because he built his career on not getting hit, when he does get hit recently, he gets dropped and he gets hurt. So I do not like that going up against Marlon Vera. Like, I am one of the biggest Dominick Cruz fans there is. Like, I love him. And, I grew up big as a WEC guy. I love everything that he brings to the table. He needs to wrestle a lot more than he has been recently, because if he strikes, I do think that one of these shots are going to land from Marlon Vera. And from what we've seen, he gets hurt and he gets dropped. And I think Marlon Vera is going to knock out Dominick Cruz. I'm going to say it right here. Hot take. I think Marlon Vera is going to knock him out.
The thing about what impressed me the most about Chito in his last fight against Rob Font, should be noted, second straight fight that is scheduled for 25 minutes, was Rob was having success in those rounds.
Yeah.
But he just would, he was patient. And you know, one of the things is Chito can be a slow starter. It's been knocked that's been on him for a while. But you just saw in those, you know, closing stages of rounds, he would drop Rob and just completely take advantage where Rob was fighting good. And we both know Rob very well. And Rob was off to a great start, but Chito, he just took advantage of it. I just feel like the 5 rounds favors Chito, Vera. You know, the one question I think I will have for Dominick Cruz is, I do wonder how quickly we will see the takedown advances from him.
Yeah, I mean that's key, right? Like, and the threat of the takedown could make Marlon Vera a little gun shy. And you add that to being a slow starter, he could be looking at rounds 3, 4, and 5. You know what I mean? So really, he has 3 rounds to work with. Yeah. So we'll have to see. But I am picking Marlon Vera. I love Dominick Cruz. I can see why you're a little hesitant with the odds. It makes sense. It's just really hard for me to pick against Marlon Vera when I know how good Rob Font is. Completely different stylistic matchup, but I'm just saying I think that Marlon Vera is hitting the peak of his career, and I don't think Dominick Cruz is anywhere close to where he used to be.
You know, I was just kind of looking at the prop odds, maybe thinking I could get a good prop on Dom Cruz wins via decision. You might as well just take the money line at that point.
Yeah.
So you're not gaining some steam there. But look, I do like what you say there with Chito Vera. I mean, obviously Chito knows he's in a position where he has to go out and make a statement, because next week we got a bantamweight matchup between Merab Dvalishvili and Jose Aldo. He's going to have to go out there and make a statement. He's 9-2 in his last 11 fights. His only losses in this 11 fights is Jose Aldo and Song Yudong. First time that Dominick Cruz fights since December of last year. That win against Pedro Munoz. Prior to that, he got in that win over Casey Kenny. And Dom Cruz, he's also a situation of, he's in the no time business, because he knows, the guy's been around. I mean, you mentioned about this. This guy's been around this sport for such a long time. And it should be a great matchup in the main event of UFC San Diego on Saturday. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here for Takedown City. Pete, you got any final thoughts for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And it's just something that I've always thought of. Like, I really think Dominick Cruz would be nasty at 125 pounds. It's probably impossible for him to reach that, but like, his style is so much more suited for 125 pounds in 2022 than how 135 pounds was back in the WEC. You know what I mean? That footwork, that point fighting style. I don't know. It's just a thought. I don't think it's ever possible, but we have seen Frankie Edgar decide to go down in a weight class at the tail end of his career. So who knows? Maybe if a loss to Marlon Vera happens, he tests those waters.
Very well could do that. But of course, appreciate everyone tuning in for Takedown City. Love to hear what your best bets are down in the comment section below. And huge thanks to our sponsor, BetMGM. Be sure to take advantage of that promo offer they have for the Takedown City watcher. Hit that video description below or hit that promo code OSMMA. So appreciate everyone tuning in for this week's edition of Takedown City. We'll be back next week as we'll be getting you ready for UFC 278. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.